Okay, I did it again. I have to explain myself a little bit before the video starts, or the proper video starts. I recorded this video pretty much right after I watched the episode, and the feelings of nostalgia were still present, so it's kind of weird. I say it's a decent episode, but then I proceed to rant about it for 20 minutes. It's almost contradictory. I still think it's without question the best episode so far, but I had a lot of problems with it, and I think I even dismiss fair criticisms as nitpicks. I don't know what came over me. This show is kind of insidious. It makes me feel like I'm watching decent Star Trek at times, but that's because it's copying decent Star Trek. And it doesn't take a lot to notice the cracks in the foundation. So I just wanted to be clear that I like this episode compared to the other three. I do. But it's still vapid. And for future episodes, I'm going to try to wait a while after I watch it before I do a video. Because the warm, fuzzy nostalgia feelings melt away after just a few minutes. Anyway, with that in mind, here's the video that I recorded right after watching the episode. Let me know what you think. Well, I'm shocked, which is not anything new when it comes to this show. I'm usually shocked, but I'm usually shocked by how terrible it is. This episode shocked me because it was actually kind of decent. It's a fucking miracle. Don't get me wrong, I still have issues with it, and the overall story that was set up by the previous 3 episodes, but as an hour-long episode of Star Trek, this was actually not bad. I know, it's fucking weird that I'm saying this. And if you've seen my previous reviews, especially the last one, you're probably going to think that I've been body snatched or something. But I have to call it like I see it. Ugh. That's a douchey saying, I'm sorry. Yeah, man, I call it like I see it. I'm a straight shooter. Ugh. Sorry. That was distasteful. But really, I don't have a ton of complaints. I had no hope whatsoever after that last episode. You know, I was so pissed off. And I didn't even want to watch this one. And I heard the same hyperbolic shit on social media about how fantastic it was. And when I hear that, I'm less likely to want to watch. And while I would not go nearly as far to say that it was fantastic, I will admit it was pretty good. Especially given the fairly horrendous setup from the previous 3 episodes. There's still a ton of references and Easter eggs. It really is obnoxious, and most of the time it makes no sense. There's a shot of a framed picture of Picard and Guinan from the Nexus in Star Trek Generations. Why? Who took that picture? It pisses me off. You know, they think the audience really is stupid and that all we really care about are little Easter eggs. It's exhausting to me. But then again, I guess I'm the only one really bothered by it, that type of shit. So I'm not going to mention it as much this time. And hopefully I could be as brief as possible. I really don't want to spend another 20 minutes ranting about Star Trek. I'm just going to talk about the big moments this time and try to focus on that. It starts where we left off with the Titan falling into the gravity well of this nebula. And Riker goes to see Picard and pretty much apologizes for the nonsense reaction he had at the end of last episode. I'm still annoyed by that. And I'm even more annoyed by it now. Because it was just meaningless. It was just a meaningless, out-of-character hook at the end of an episode to make your jaw drop. That's all it was. And he basically explains his reasons for why he's been so cautious as captain so far. And it links back to the death of his son. And I gotta be honest, I still don't totally buy it. I think that is kind of a ridiculous explanation for how he's behaving. But Jonathan Frakes almost makes me buy it. He really is great in this scene. I don't know if I've ever seen him do a better job acting. It really is outstanding. And Picard doesn't say a word the entire time. It's just Riker the whole time. And I thought that was great. And As bad as it was at the end of last episode, this scene did a lot to try to save it. I really don't have anything negative to say about this scene. And if you've seen it, I'm sure you agree. And I just want to be clear about my opinion of last episode's conflict between these two characters. I was critical of Riker's strategy of running away. I stand by that, but I didn't really mention that I also thought Picard's strategy of fighting was ridiculous too. I felt like they were both arguing in favor of overly simplistic, one-dimensional strategies that really didn't make any sense given the goofball circumstances and given the combat experiences of the two guys. So I just want to be clearer on my opinion on that, but moving on. Towards the end of the conversation, Riker says that this is the end for them. All hope is lost, and he tells Picard to get to know his son while he has the chance. And meanwhile, Seven finds the body of Ensign Foster. The changeling killed him and took his place. Seven informs Riker, and he tells her to find the changeling, but keep it quiet. He doesn't want everyone to know about the changeling. So she goes to see Shaw, who is recovering from his injuries in his quarters. Recovering very quickly, by the way. In the timeline of the show, he was literally bleeding out from internal injuries like an hour ago. But his only ailment seems to be a busted leg, which is now in a cast. Whatever. She tells Shaw about the changeling. I guess he is a safe bet because of his injury. He's probably not the changeling. And she says that he knows this shit better than anyone. So they get to talking about changelings, and he tells her to look for the bucket that the changeling uses to revert back to his liquid form. He calls it a pot, and this is done only so they can make a joke about cannabis. Pretty cringe. And he says if you find the pot or the bucket, you'll be able to find the changeling by scanning the residual goo inside. There's a lot of problems with this. Changelings don't use buckets. Odo is the only one that used a bucket. Changelings have to revert to their liquid form once a day. But they don't need a bucket to do it. Odo used a bucket because he preferred to use a bucket. Why does this changeling have a bucket? And why does it turn out to be the same type of bucket that Odo used? Isn't that a Bajoran bucket? Or a Cardassian bucket? I think it was a Bajoran bucket. Either way, it's dumb. Doesn't make sense. And ultimately pointless, because it's not how the changeling is caught anyway. The bucket ends up being totally inconsequential. That's not how they catch him. So it's literally just a reference. It's just another Easter egg. And I just... it's exhausting. I don't know what to tell you. And I feel like I have to address the swearing in modern Star Trek. Obviously, I don't have a problem with swearing. If you watched any of my videos, you know I'm pretty liberal with the fuck word. But it's so weird in Star Trek. It feels wrong. Not wrong in the sense that I'm clutching my pearls over it, or that I'm shocked by it, but weird in the sense that it takes me out of it. It doesn't feel like Star Trek speak. And because of Star Trek 4, where Kirk and Spock don't even really know how to curse properly, and I know that was done for comedic effect, I acknowledge that, but it still feels almost universe-breaking when they do it so nonchalantly in current Trek. Or at least, at the very least, fourth wall breaking. I just wish they wouldn't do it. Seven calls Shaw a dick, which he is, I agree. But it took me out of it when she said that. And they don't even use it intelligently half the time, which also bugs me. There's a scene where Picard says he spent, and I quote, 10 fucking grueling hours on a shuttle. I don't mean to brag, but I am a poet when it comes to using the word fuck and all of its variations. Okay? 10 fucking grueling hours is redundant. Either get rid of the word fucking, 10 grueling hours, or get rid of the word grueling, 10 fucking hours. Because fucking, in that context, already indicates that it was grueling. So you don't need both. They just put it in there because they thought it would be cute for Picard to say the word fucking. Because the writers are infants. Hire me. If you want to include curse words in this show, I will help you out tremendously. Unfortunately, I'm only a master with curse words, so you'll need to get someone else to handle the rest of the dialogue, which is also shit. Because I'm barely coherent the rest of the time. And for the handful of fuckwits that think I show a lack of intelligence when I swear, I assure you, I put thought into when and where I curse. It's calculated. So please, shut the fuck up about it. Jesus, I'm sorry. I guess it tells you that this episode is pretty decent when I just spent all this time talking about the fuck word. Anyway, if you still happen to be here, I think we should just move on. Where the fuck were we, anyway? Oh, right. Picard spends some time with Jack. He takes him to a holodeck program of the 10 Forward Bar back on Earth. And Jack notes that it's a little weird that the holodeck is still active, given that the Titan is desperately low on power right now. And Picard says the holodeck runs on an independent power cell, so it doesn't use any of the ship's power. Well, that's nice. But maybe you should unplug that power cell and hook it up to the fucking ship. Because they need all the help they can get right now. But I suppose that is a nitpick. And Jack says he doesn't need this reconciliation with his estranged dad. Picard believes that he's the one that needs it. And eventually, Shaw walks in on them and he reveals what we already know. That he was at Wolf 359 during the Borg attack under Locutus. And this is by far the worst scene in the episode for me. He goes on a rant and blames Picard for his traumatic experience. And I don't buy it for a minute. I really don't. We've done this, and we've done it better. We've done the Starfleet officer blaming Picard for being a Borg. It made sense with Sisko. Those wounds were fresh, but it's been 30 years. And I'm sorry, Shaw has to know better. Blaming a former Borg drone after 30 years of learning new things about how the Borg function, Shaw should know better. He's a moron if he still believes Picard was responsible. And granted, he does immediately feel like a dickhead when Picard leaves the room. Fair enough. But then the whole scene is pointless, because it's just this manufactured drama. It's a scene that is designed to make Picard feel bad, and we've had a shit ton of those in these 3 seasons, haven't we? It's just another guy yelling at Picard, and it's over something that we've seen before. I do not care about Shaw's trauma. It's not his trauma. It's Sisko's trauma. He's basically a carbon copy. The only difference is that his wife didn't die. But he's still blaming Picard the same way. And again, I have to bring it up again. If he's so against the Borg, why is Seven his first officer? Makes absolutely no sense. But moving on. We get a brief scene with Vadik aboard the Shrike where she cuts off her hand. And she's obviously a changeling of some sort because it molds into the shape of some sort of superior who orders her to pursue the Titan into the gravity well. I don't really understand what exactly this was about. I guess we'll find out. If you have any speculation on it, let me know. Because that was just weird to me. Maybe she's not a changeling. But, like, she just has a piece of a changeling on her and uses it to communicate with them? I don't know. Send me your thoughts on that one. And Beverly discovers something about the nebula. It's basically in the process of giving birth. And the bioelectrical waves that have been bombarding the ship are some sort of, they're like contractions. It's essentially a life form in space. And they theorize that they can use the energy waves to essentially recharge the ship and ride it out of the gravity well. Riker's against it, and it makes no sense given that they have no other options, really. But he does finally agree. And they need Shaw to do some tinkering with the nacelles. He has a background in engineering, and there's a ton of techno jargon and mumbo-jumbo, but as I understand it, They basically need him to open the nacelles so that they can charge up using the energy from the wave. They basically need him to open the USB ports on the nacelles, basically. And they specifically need him to do it because the components are 20 years old and only he would know how to do it, which makes absolutely no sense at all. I hate to nitpick it, but it's literally just to give him something heroic to do. The Titan A is a new ship. The A indicates that it's new. It's only retro in appearance, right? Surely the components are not retro. And the crew, I don't care how young they are, they have to have experience with ship tech that is 20 years old. Starfleet keeps old ships in service. They use the Excelsior class for like 80 years. Whatever. It's a nitpick, I admit that. So the plan is in place and they're ready to go. And Picard takes command of the Titan. And I gotta admit, it was cool to see that. It felt right to have him in the center seat again. Especially since we have been denied that for 2.5 seasons now. And here's another nitpick. While Shaw is working on the nacelles, Ensign LaForge walks in. And it's obviously not Ensign LaForge. It's painfully obvious because she's flying the ship right now. She wouldn't be here. So it's the changeling. 7 points of phaser at it, suspecting it's the changeling, and it's confirmed when the changeling calls her Commander Hansen instead of Commander 7. It was shown in the previous episode that LaForge called her Commander 7. So 7 just shoots the changeling and it dies. It's just a really poor choice to impersonate the ship's helmsman during a tense situation when she would definitely be on the bridge. But it's nice that she was able to show Shaw why it's respectful to call her 7 instead of Annika or Hansen. In any case, they succeed. They ride the wave out, and they encounter the Shrike. Looks pretty grim at first, but Riker has them grab an asteroid with the tractor beam and then hurl it at the Shrike, disabling it. It's a bit of a rah-rah moment. I'm not going to lie. As ridiculous as it is, I mean, it's literally the Galaxy Quest maneuver. But instead of mines, it's just a big rock. But whatever. They're out. And they notice that the nebula gave birth to a bunch of big jellyfish-looking things, which might be the aliens from Encounter at Farpoint. I'm not sure. The episode is referenced, but I don't know if they're supposed to be the same. In any case, they go to warp and they escape. And we've been getting some flashbacks throughout the episode of Picard from 5 years ago, where he's in the 10 forward bar, of course, as he always is. Every waking moment of his private life is spent in this fucking bar. And he's regaling some young cadets about all his adventures, and it's revealed that Jack was actually in the bar. He's wearing a hat and obscuring his face a little bit, and he asks Picard if he had any life or family outside of Starfleet. And Picard says Starfleet has been the only family he ever needed. So that explains why Jack never bothered to contact Picard. Although it's kind of funny he's in a bar 5 years ago. Jack was probably not old enough to drink 5 years ago, despite the fact that he's clearly a 47-year-old man. And in the present, Jack is having some kind of weird visions. We got a glimpse of that in the last episode too. I'm not sure what that's about. I'm sure Jack is shaping up to be some sort of pain-in-the-ass MacGuffin for the season. But I guess we'll find out. But overall, it's a pretty good episode. Other than the Shaw scene on the holodeck and the obnoxious swearing and the references, I don't have any real complaints outside of nitpicks. It feels more like a Star Trek episode than any episode that we've seen prior, including past seasons. So maybe, just maybe, there's a glimmer of hope. Still not a lot of the original ideas, that's fine, as long as they can stay true to the characters and not break the universe any further, I'll be fine with it. I know that's a big ask, but I guess we'll see. And I still don't love the setup for this season. I really don't. I don't love the idea that Picard has to have a son to become a whole person. I think that's a weird message to be sending. But overall, this episode is at worst benign, and at best, a pretty solid Star Trek episode. There's a number of things about it that felt very Star Trek. All hope seems to be lost. Then it's like Picard, Riker, and Crusher get in a room together, and they talk strategy, and it's like, come on, we've been through worse. This is old hat. And they all work together to solve a problem. There's also a new life form. I mean, to seek out new life and new civilizations, we haven't seen a glimmer of that in any Picard episode up until now. I know it was brief, and it might be a species we've already met before, but even if that's true, I'll take it. At least it's something Star Trek-y. And it remains to be seen if this is a step in the right direction or just a case of a broken clock being right twice a day. We'll just have to wait and see. And let me know what you thought of this one. And I'm sorry, I lied. I said I wasn't going to talk about Star Trek for 20 minutes, and here we are, 20 minutes later, I'm still yapping. Because I'm a loudmouth ass. Anyway, that's all I got for now. Until next time, take it easy.